Hi, I am the program director for Mama's Voices, Nicole Purnell, and thank you for joining us to watch a replay from one of our AIM Extension webinar series that was hosted in August of 2023. We want to thank the AIM program for their support and trust with the lived experience integration into quality improvement community learning. These materials were developed with support from the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, a part of the cooperative agreement with the American College of OBGYNs, under grant number UC4MC28042, Alliance for Innovation on Maternal Health. The contents do not necessarily represent the official views of, nor endorsement by HRSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. For more information, please visit HRSA.gov. And now we'll get back to our webinar.
Here and set up. We are going to have everybody introduce themselves. And so I think first off, I had actually Desiree, if you can just introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about your birth story and what it is that got you into this work and how you got here. There we go, Desiree.
Hi, I'm Desiree Farron. I am from a small town in Utah. I had a series of very unexpected hemorrhages with the birth of my third baby that ended in an emergency hysterectomy. I'm kind of unique in the fact that my most catastrophic experience happened at 6 weeks postpartum. And at 6 weeks postpartum, you think you're in the clear. You are home, you have a routine. We did not expect any of this to come our way. And it left me rocked. I found Mama's Voices while I was looking for some connection and some validation to what had happened to me. And it's an incredible organization that kind of creates, I feel like it's a sisterhood of just these women who cheer each other on and are all passionate about the work. So I'm really grateful to be here and to be a part of this team.
Thank you. All right, Sherwanda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sherwanda Knight. I am a mom of 3. My story is that before I had my first child, living child, I had 5 miscarriages, 2 stillborns before her. No one never explained to me why or my medical history. I was told by one doctor that it was all in my head and I needed to see a therapist. When I got pregnant with my first living child, towards the end of my pregnancy, I developed preeclampsia. No one explained what preeclampsia was. They just said it was high blood pressure. During my second pregnancy, with my second living child, I ended up having him at 33 weeks. Emergency C-section. No one explained to me what was going on. Me and my son both actually died on the table. No one told us. I found out through my my discharge papers that we both died on the table. No one explained anything to me. During his birth, after birth, it was the worst because no one came to my postpartum room, which I clotted. And I clotted in the toilet, and no one actually came in to see what was. No one made sure that I didn't overbleed or anything. Just let me go by my right way. My third living child is where I got a little bit of help. I found out that I had sickle cell through a doctor that actually cared. She told me that I sound like one of her children that had sickle cell, and she wanted to test me for sickle cell, which found out I have hemoglobin C. Still today, I became an advocate because I wanted people to, like me, to understand that they have a voice. They don't have to hear what a doctor tells them. They don't have to hear the no. They don't have to give up because, you couldn't have your children at the first time. So I'm an advocate for women, and I ran across Mama's Voices through a therapist. She actually said a program that will be good for me, and she introduced me to y'all.
I didn't know that. That's amazing, Sherwanda. I always like, it's just always just curiosity of like how people find us and how we were able to, it's such a big world and we're able to connect
She
through.
said I was an advocate. She was like, you always advocating for something. You're always helping someone. You don't let people give up. She was like, you always telling your story and you don't never cry behind it. How you're strong. I said, because me personally, going through things is a lesson. It's not for you to sit down on it. It's to teach others, because someone is going through the same thing you're going through and they just don't know how to get through it. And it takes a strong person to go through what they went through to express to someone that's not strong, that's not educated, that's not vocal, to learn to speak up for themselves. And you don't have to always listen to a doctor. You can tell them who you are, your body. This is you. So she was like, you do this a lot, and I got a program for you. And she just happened to give me Mother's Voices, and history is making it.
That's awesome. That's a lot of the background behind Mama's Voices too, and why we've developed the program that we developed is like to help all the people behind the hard lessons and the missteps that I made along the way. So it's great. I love to hear that. Thank you, Sherwanda. Now I'm moving down my Brady Bunch squares to Ashley.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ashley Miller and I live in Colorado. So I have lived experience with substance use during pregnancy. I had been sober for about 15 months and then I got pregnant with my twins. And after I found out it was twins, I had relapsed for about a month. And so a lot of that, like in my recovery after, I had experienced like a lot of different things like around CPS and like recovery and domestic violence and stuff. I had started going through to different committees and like trying to share my story and like change the way that providers like handle or work with patients with lived experience or like lived experience with substance use during pregnancy. But kind of my adverse birth experience was when during my twins I had one baby vaginal and then my other son had flipped and his cord collapsed, so he came out emergency C-section. And what I know is that there was 13 minutes in between my twins, and my son with that had the emergency C-section had gone through hypoxia, and he was without oxygen and lost consciousness, and he had to be resuscitated when he was born. So a lot of that situation, the doctors tried to, I think, really blame me for because of my 1 month relapse during my pregnancy. And I don't think that anybody like really was looking at like what he went through and why his body was reacting to the trauma that had just happened. So, after a lot of like recovery and a foundation, I started to go through different committees and like, I eventually led up with Mama's Voices and became, a patient family partner to be able to help advocate for women who struggle with substance use and pregnancy, because I think a lot of people just think, oh, you're pregnant, just don't do it, and that it's far more complicated than that. And so and I think, in my theory at least is that pregnancy is smothered with intense emotions, right? Like women go through so many emotions, and when you only know how to cope with substances, whatever that substance is, pregnancy sounds like a perfect storm for coping with a substance. So I've just really been kind of working and like advocating for moms to be treated like a human, instead of having like a moral defect or like they don't care about their babies, because I think that all moms care about their babies, and even though their choices may not be ideal or the best for any given situation, I still think that they care about their kids, and and they just need a different kind of support, right? Like, I think support is very individualized, and what might work for me would be very different than somebody else. And so I think that that's kind of a part of like what I'm doing and why I've joined different committees and Mama's Voices to advocate for moms.
Thank you. Thank you. And Hada?
Hi, everyone. I'm Huda. I'm from Dearborn Heights, Michigan. I had an amniotic fluid embolism back in 2014 with my first pregnancy. Amniotic fluid is said to, it's really a life-threatening complication for both mom and baby. It's an allergic reaction that happens when the fluid enters the mother's bloodstream. And this is a normal process. It happens all the time, but some women, they're said that they might have like an allergic reaction to it. So that's what happened to me. Thankfully, I survived. My daughter survived. She was perfectly healthy at 2 pounds. I was able to go on and have a second baby via C-section, but I met with the amniotic fluid embolism, wanting to share my story, and they introduced me to Mama's Voices, and history was made. So I was able to join on a lot of committees. I'm doing a lot of work with Mama's Voices, and also I became a state liaison for the Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation, where we basically talk to hospitals on how to kind of better prepare themselves for when they do have an amniotic fluid embolism patient that's actively going through it. And we provide tools for them. I also just really, I'm very passionate about like I'm echoing what everyone just said, just kind of really advocate for mothers who go through anything when it comes to postpartum or delivering their baby. And we just really want to be heard, and we want to be understood. And I think that's what's really important. And I think we each are going through this because we are strong, we are special, and God put us here to say, hey, you guys are going through this, and now we're literally creating change. And I think that all of our voices are really important. So I'm very excited to be part of Mama's Voices and just kind of continuing to create change in hospital settings and anywhere.
Thank you, Hada.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So those of you on this call that don't know, we have done a program over the past 2 years called Community of Learning, and that's this is part of that project that was funded by AIM and HRSA. And each of these PFPs here have been a faculty, and they've served as faculty on one of these cohorts that we've had. So not all of them in the same cohort, some of them in different ones. And so through that process, what we do is we meet with the states, we do meet with PQCs and different organizations that are involved in each state. We've also done one with hospitals, and they are leading those discussions. And so they're meeting with the states and having time for them to share in breakout rooms, which these folks are leading those, facilitating those breakout rooms. And we learn a lot there. And so one of the things that we do at the end of each of those calls is after the breakout rooms, we come back together and share anything that we might have learned, because we want to be able to bring forth as many ideas. You know, when you get in a breakout room, sometimes you go down a tangent and the other breakout room goes down a different tangent. So let's learn from each other. So we wanted to be able to bring the perspectives of different cohorts together today to talk about this topic on recruiting patient family partners, because it's such a important topic, and we get asked this question so many times, like, where do we even begin? And so today I just really wanted to be able to kind of talk through some of those things. And for starters, I wanted to hear what you all think through the different things you've been involved in, stuff, not just as faculty, but you've been involved outside of Mama's Voices. We've matched you with opportunities as well. But what do you think involving patient family partners in quality improvement projects, how can that be beneficial to the process?
Go ahead, Sharwanda.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
I think it's so important because it's not only just humanizes us. I think with these cohorts that I have been on, when I speak with the providers, they really listen, and I'm able to kind of connect with them in a way, and kind of humanizing us. And I love that they come back and say, we love your expertise. The ideas that you're giving. So like, for example, with me, in Michigan, a lot of people know that I became a patient family partner outside of Mama's Voices. And they'll call me and say, hey, Huda, can you talk to my OBGYN? Because I'm really frightened and I'm really scared. And I'm able to talk with the doctors and let them know, hey, we trust you. We're not saying that take off your coat, we need somebody else in the room. We trust you, but we really want you to listen if the patient is saying something is wrong, to really listen to us. And I echo this so much because I have proof of me screaming in pain, and there was a resident over me saying, oh, it's okay, it's okay. So I want to let hospitals know, like, I understand the importance of residency and the importance of students and it's practicing medicine, right? But I also feel like the person that's on that bed getting the surgery or delivering, naturally, it's really important to say, okay, we want to make sure this patient survives. Let's prevent whatever we can prevent. Accidents happen, but let's try to prevent it. Let's get a professional in here to stand over me and say, oh, she's screaming. She's having a C-section. Why is she screaming? Why is she in agonizing pain? Let's figure it out. Half of what probably happened to me could have been avoided that way. So that's why I feel like it's so important to kind of have patients in there and say, hey, this is what happened to me. Let's do some extra training. Let's train on this diagnosis, preeclampsia or whatever it may be. Let's train more and get our providers better equipped. And I think that's what's so important.
Thank you, Huda. I see, Ashley, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just kind of something to what Huda talked about. She said when we need to listen to the patient. And so when they went in for my emergency C-section, I could feel them cutting me open. Like I wasn't numb enough. I was swatting at them, like yelling at them, like, stop, I can feel that, I can feel that. And, I think it was such an emergency to get him out. They just knocked me out, right? And then as soon as I woke up, I was just like, where's my baby? Like, where's my other baby? Like, what happened? Like, what is going on? And I never really got those answers. And it was really going through the eight-week course with you guys these past 2 months is I started to really wonder, what did happen? Like, why don't I know? Like all this stuff had happened after the traumatic birth experience. And then I went to postpartum and then recovery and raising twins by myself, all these things. And now I just requested the birth records from when they were born so that I can find out more information. But, I think listening is so important because you don't know what's happening in their body. I think we just have to trust that they're telling the truth. And I wonder, what would that look like if they just trusted that you were telling the truth of whatever is happening to you, you're telling them. And so, yeah, I agree with Huda.
You and you're the expert in your own experience, right? And so trusting in that and listening. All right, Sherwanda.
So I'm just gonna feed off of them because it's true. My first daughter, I was on the table and I kept saying, I can feel y'all cutting. You're on my left side, you're on my right side. And she was like, it's impossible. And I'm like, I have feeling in my feet. And she was like, is it possible? I started wiggling my feet on the table and she was like, oh, she can feel. And I'm like, why would I be lying about I can feel? And she was like, do it hurt? I'm like, it doesn't hurt. I'm just letting y'all know I still can feel. With my son, because I do fast stories. I'm sorry, y'all. My stories be so fast. Because it'd be a lot in my stories. My son, actually, I walked around with seizures and the doctor sent me home every week. Every Tuesday, the doctor, I'm not going to never forget, sent me home. And I kept telling my mother kept saying that I will space out. And I'm like, I didn't space out. She was like, you spaced out because I was talking to you. Not knowing that I was actually having a seizure. He didn't pay attention that I missed the medication for my hypertension. They lowered my doses, but I was still using the higher dose 2 times a day because he told me to use the lower dose 2 times a day, and I was making a mistake in using that other one 2 times a day. And I'm telling him this is the mistake I made during this whole week. Didn't realize it, and he was like, "Oh, you did?" And he sent me home, not knowing that I could have went home and died because you wasn't paying attention to me. So sometimes you got to listen to your patients. Not knowing that I was actually having seizures, it took the last day for my pressure not to go back down, for him to actually see that it wasn't a game. I wasn't joking, you know. And then I spaced out on him. That's what happened. I spaced out on him. And he was like, "Oh, I think you're having a seizure." And I'm looking at him like, "I've been telling you this." So it's important to listen to us. I understand that you have the medical histories and, you know, the doctrines and the education behind you, but we know our bodies. Everyone's body is not the same. We're not created the same. So sometimes you have to pay attention to us. You have to listen to us. Educate us so we can educate you. It's like a two-way street.
Love that.
I just want to echo what they've said. I love what you said, Sharonda. Educate us so we can help educate you. I think the importance of a wide variety of experiences is you can take the common threads from our experiences and apply that to the situations. And while we are all very unique in what has happened to us, in my case, everything went right in a very wrong situation. And I was heard and I was, you know, I'm alive today, but I still have the same common experiences and threads throughout my story that other women who have had the same experiences have. And I think you take those and that's where you learn. When you see wait a minute, if they're all saying this, something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have here such a diverse group of experiences and people in different areas. You know, Desiree, you're in a rural area. You know, Sharonda, you are not in a rural area by any means. And so and then Ashley and Hudda, you're in like Colorado, Michigan, and I don't know how rural or not rural you are. Some of those areas can be, but you know, there's just such a difference in being able to have the different perspectives. It really makes a difference, because even if you have you look alike or you live in the same town, you're going to have a different experience and with what you went through. So we always encourage that diversity in the voices, and why it's so important to have more than one. So what are some things that healthcare providers can do to create an environment that encourages and empowers patient family partners to provide advice and support? What is that thing that they can do that helps build that trust? Ashley.
I think that curiosity is always really helpful, like not assuming. And so just like asking questions about like what life looks like outside of that doctor's appointment. Or so like for me, for instance, like when I relapsed during my pregnancy, I told my doctor right away, it is not something I wanted to do. It is not something I planned to do. It just kind of happened. I knew that's really not what I wanted to be a part of my story. And, unfortunately it is, but, they could have asked like, well, what happened? Like, why did you start using? Well, I had domestic violence at home. Like, well, what does domestic violence at home look like? Like, I had to escape that situation to get better. Like, I couldn't just leave it. Like, I had to escape it. And I think curiosity and like just asking some open-ended questions, even like not close-ended questions that have a yes or no or a date answer, to enrich the conversation is really helpful in creating connection with a client or patient. And I think that that's what lacked in my situation most, because they were just like, oh, you need to go get help. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm telling you. Like, a lot of women wouldn't come in here and just tell you that they relapsed. They would hide, and they wouldn't want to be noticed for something like this because it's shameful, right? Like, I used a substance when I was pregnant. That comes with a lot of shame. And so I think just curiosity creates connection, which creates better patient provider relationships.
Thank you. Sharonda.
So for me, I agree with her. Curiosity, different stories, similar things. Instead of pushing us off, I'm in poverty areas. I'm on medical assistance. Just because I'm on these things does not mean that I'm not educated. I'm not smart enough to answer questions. I don't, things happen like her, domestic violence. I'm in the same situation. Domestic violence caused me to lose jobs and, end up on medical assistance. But it does not mean that I'm not smart enough to understand my own body or what goes on at home. Because for me, I feel as though stress could have caused a lot of my complications. So how can you help me help you? You know, help me get out of my situation to see if stress was part of the reason why I was going through, or, don't just push me away because, oh, she's just a poverty person. She's a nobody. But I am someone. And I felt as though that's how they treated us. Like, we're no one. Who is she? Because she's on medical assistance. They read our charts instead of reading who we are. Get to know us. As a doctor, sometimes get to know your patient is to get to know their backgrounds. Who you are. Sometimes it might get a little personal. And I think that's the best thing. Sometimes being a little personal can help make a doctor understand your background and maybe help you with your medical situations.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's finding that humanity and with each other and being able to connect. There was somewhere it's been more than a year ago, I'll lose track of time, but they were saying, when did having a baby become like an assembly line where we're just pushed through? And it hit me, it is stuck, because it's been at least 2 years since I heard that comment. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes it does feel like that. And we've lost that. And unfortunately, I can't even say it's just in having, in the maternal health space. There was someone I was talking to the other day, and they were seeing a pulmonologist, and it was like the pulmonologist would not make eye contact during the appointment. They were looking at their computer the whole time. And so I understand, like, the new age and everything being digital electronic, but we lost that connection because something as simple as making eye contact with the patient when you're in a room with them. So it's so important just to find that humanity thread and treat somebody like you would want to be treated, or your spouse or your parent or your child, and that. Any other ideas or things that you've witnessed that helps to build trust?
I think it's just really important to make us feel like we are important, that we are part of our care. I really like the idea of team birth. I know some hospitals are using it. I just wish all hospitals use it, and also include more of patients' involvement. So like, I'm a patient, I'm here getting a check-in for getting an ultrasound, and I don't want just me getting checked in like that. I want to be able to know everything. Like, for example, my sister had her baby in December of last year, and I went in with her because they were telling her, you have to go to labor and delivery right now. And she's like, I don't understand. They're not telling me why. The tech is not telling me why. The doctor came in. I'm scared. And we have trauma from the hospital that I delivered in, and that's where she was supposed to deliver at. And her doctor's like, I'm not going to make it. So I had to kind of create a plan to get her out of the hospital. It was my trauma, and I was like trying to get her out, because we're not getting a doctor that's actually sitting there to explain to us. Simple as making us feel important and helping us understand what is going on. Why does she need to run upstairs to have her baby? Simple as that. Just sit down. And I sat him down. I was like, we understand, we respect what you were saying, but we're not going to just run up there and have her have the baby. Can you please explain what you're seeing in the screen? We want to understand what's going on. And just me questioning that gave her less of an anxiety. And he literally sat with us and explained to us what was going on. So after him saying there's going to be some other people that are going to deliver her, she was really scared. I was like, let's just go to the other hospital that I like. So we went there, and we had a completely different treatment. They did take us in, they accepted us. And I shared with them my story. I shared with them how my sister's afraid, because she was there when it happened to me. She witnessed it all. I don't remember anything, right? But she's very traumatized, and she was afraid from the get-go, her being pregnant for her first baby, thinking, what if what happened to you is going to happen to me because we're sisters? I'm like, no, don't, and I'm showing her about amniotic fluid embolism foundation. I'm giving her information about Mama's Voices and what we're doing, and how doctors are more aware now. When you talk to them, you just let them understand. And she just felt more comfortable when I asked the right questions to the providers. And I think that's what's important, is to kind of educate patients as well as training physicians on how to communicate with their patients. I think that's where the gap is. Like, we're here saying, oh, this is what happened to us, treat us right, but are doctors getting trained? Are they gonna understand how to communicate with patients? Culture, and cultural, I think it's called cultural competence. And not just culturally, just in every way, just to kind of humanize us and understand us and sit with us and talk to us like we're humans. You know, we're not just another patient coming in to get a procedure done. We're having a baby, and it's life threatening. Anybody can pass away having a baby. So take it as if like you can lose this patient if you don't give it your all. And I think that's what's important, is to include patients, to kind of really also train physicians as well.
It's so true. And it's a reason why it's a life event with your insurance and changing it, because what other profession does a doctor go in with one patient and come out with 2 or 3, in Ashley's case. But it is a life change. And so it just changes so much about everything that we do. And so 100%. Thank you, Hada, for sharing that. All right. So another question I had for you all was, what are some methods that you have learned to ensure that PFPs feel comfortable speaking up and expressing their ideas on different quality improvement projects?
I have been lucky enough to help on a state level with our PQC, and the very first meeting, it was intimidating. It's all a lot at first, right? And the very first meeting, our program director, who is phenomenal, just looked at me and said, I want you to know you're the expert here. Out of everybody in this meeting, you are the expert. And that meant everything to me. It made me feel so much more comfortable and calm, and realizing that, wait a minute, I am the expert because I'm the one who's been through this site and they do want my opinion. That's why I'm here. So that meant everything to me.
I agree with Desiree. My first time ever getting offered to be on a PQC was in the Pennsylvania Perinatal Collaborative, through Mama's Voices. And I think I cried when I started first sharing my story, and I really felt intimidated. But I think the more I kept, agreeing to be on PQCs and talking and being on the Zoom calls and getting little Nicole and Becca and Mandy these emails that I receive of uplifting us and stuff, and just providing agendas and letting us know what's the next step and what to do. It helps us prepare. And I think the more you get into it, like you said, Desiree, in the beginning, yeah, it's intimidating, but I feel more confident, I feel like I'm important being part of this. Yeah.
So preparation was really important. Ashley or Shawanda, anything that you've felt has helped you to feel comfortable speaking up in a quality improvement project?
I think what everybody kind of is, the other ladies are like leading to, is just being valued. Like, you feel valued. And I think that that's so important, because then you don't feel this small, right? Like, you feel like I think kind of like how you were talking about in the course that we just did, like the credentials don't matter here. Like, we're all just on the same level here. And I think like that power differential, once that kind of is eliminated, you can bring your best to the table, which is what is most helpful. So just to be valued is really important to, one, how you share your story, what parts of your story like you bring to the table, and like how you present. And so, yeah, I think being valued is really critical. Yeah.
That intimidation thing too is like you said, that power dynamic. There was a couple years ago, we had Dr. Wanda Barfield was a speaker at Summit back in 2020 when it was all virtual. And I got on a call with her beforehand to do some prep. She's the head of the CDC Department of Reproductive Health. And I was like shaking and freaking out. She is the sweetest person. But I had to remind myself, like, she puts her pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. Like, she's not a superwoman. I had to keep telling myself, like, calm down, Nicole, calm down. But, sometimes you get in these rooms with these doctors and you're like, oh my gosh. But she was so, I don't know if Desiree, if you were part of that one when she came in and she was wearing her Mama's Voices shirt, she was so proud of it. She had her sass and everything, but it was like, okay, she related to us so well, but we miss that sometimes. And I think that's one of the things that's so important in what we do when we do these groups, is that I understand that you might be the head of a department or university or whatever, some big agency, but here we're all just going to be people and we're going to relate on a first name basis. And I hope that's okay with you. So that's wonderful to hear.
I actually do remember that was my first Mama's Voices conference. And something she said at that conference has stuck out with me through all of this. And she said, your wet went right in the system. You are still here because we are doing a good job. We have so much more to do, but your voice and your story matter because you are our successes. And that has been a driving force for me because there is so much change that needs to happen, but I'm still alive today because of how wonderful our system is. I mean, I know there's absolutely change, but I have loved that. I loved that quote that she gave us.
Oh, that is so like we've done so many things that some of those all blur together, but that you have remembered that. It's been 3 years since that. So that's awesome that she made such an impact on you. I know she made me feel a lot less. I stopped freaking out so much. And that was helpful because I was totally freaking out. Oh, great. And it's tough to see sometimes. I'm in Texas and, there's a lot that's bad. There's also a lot that's good. And so sometimes it's hard to see where improvements are being made when we're so in the weeds sometimes in the work. But when we look at it, I do see where progress is being made. It's going to take time. We're not going anywhere. Our work is not done. That's for sure. But we definitely can see how there are some things that are getting better and folks are definitely trying. Those that are showing up to these calls and these trainings. Now I think we've trained probably 40 different states through the community learning program. And those are ones that are interested and they're wanting to make a difference. And so it's how do we get beyond those ones that are showing up and want to learn into the ones that are still in the clinics that might be not getting all of the same updated information. How do we get down into that point? So like I said, the work isn't going away anytime soon, but I do know that we're being heard by many different people.
I'm really excited that I was introduced by another woman, a PFP from Mama's Voices. And I was so happy that she works at the hospital that I was airlifted to. And I was like, I can't wait to meet her. And then I was able to sit on a board. I'm a board member now with her at U of M Ann Arbor for a patient community action board. And they just launched it. And I can't wait for the work that we're going to be doing. And I'm so excited. And it's just insane how I was like, just got done saying, I was like, I wish I could find someone in Michigan that has gone through a PFP training and stuff. And then it just came right on my lap. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. So I love the work that Mama's Voices is doing. And they're connecting so many people, even when they don't even know it, to be honest. So very thankful for you guys.
Thank you. It is a lot, but I love it I love connecting with people. I'm not quite the same level that Becca does, but Becca makes everybody her bestie. And I love to help. Like when I talk to someone, oh, you're from Michigan. Okay, who else I know from Michigan? Who else I know? Okay, I don't know anybody else from Utah. Baltimore, I think I know some people. Like we should connect y'all. Colorado, same thing. Like I'm always I had someone ask me that last year. They're like, why do you do that? I was like, I don't know. My brain just runs that way. So I'm always thinking of how can I connect those dots. So how do you foster a positive and empowering relationship between a PFP and a healthcare provider? What are some things that you've seen us do or that you've experienced between yourself and a healthcare provider that's made that a positive connection?
I'll go first. Letting them know this is a confidential room. Everyone in this room is important. There's no wrong answers. There's no right answers. We're going to learn from each other. What can I get from you that I didn't understand? And what can you get from me that you didn't understand? And the willingness to learn. The biggest key is, as you're coming in, are you willing to learn from the provider? And for me, the PFP. So will you learn from me and will I learn from you? The willingness.
Yeah, and also not really pointing fingers, because when we come in as PFPs with lived experiences, I think they kind of get the idea like, oh, we're all under this umbrella that we are at fault at what we do, or we're doing our work wrong, or whatnot. So just kind of like making the room more comfortable and saying like, we're not here to point fingers. We want to come together to collaborate and just to kind of create change together. No one here is at fault, but the system is, some of the things in the system is kind of broken, and we want to try to work our way around it and fix whatever we feel like needs to be fixed. And I love that. The breakout room and sessions, like I felt like I resonated with a lot of women there. And when we, I remember asking a question like, have you experienced, have you had a lived experience? And just to kind of break, the quietness. And I think, Ashley, you were with me, and I think we had like 2 women kind of speak about their lived experience, providers that kind of shared their story with us. So that was pretty cool.
I know it's tough for providers that have their own lived experience. Sometimes they don't know what hat to wear. Do I wear my professional hat, or do I wear my lived experience hat? And sometimes it keeps them from speaking up on their lived experience, because they don't want to be like maybe the only one, and then all the questions go to them. So but it is in these groups of just finding those ways to connect. Any other things that help foster that positive relationship?
I really like how Huda, oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. I really like how Huda talked about collaboration. I think that is a really, really helpful tool in helping patient.
And I agree about the I think they kind of think we're going to villainize them. And every time I meet with them, the first thing I say is, I just want you to know I'm pro provider. I'm only alive because you are so good at your jobs. But here's a few things that I think we can work on. And I think starting out with, you're really good at what you do, and we know the amount of time and energy it's taking you to get to this point. But I also am good at what I do, and I just want to combine forces here. And if we take both of our talents, we can be unstoppable.
That's so true. We try really hard to make sure that we convey to all the healthcare professionals that, our PFPs are here to work together to find those solutions together. We want to do that, knowing that to do that, we have to both be open to those conversations and leave, whether you want to say the egos or the emotion at the door. Sometimes, we do get emotional, but we are here to make solutions together. And we know that's by working together as partners. So thank you. I love the way you put that. We're gonna have to capture that. If you're having problems and they don't trust you or they're scared, like this is a great way to kind of diffuse that. What are some things that you think recruiting patients is tough, and especially some of these like Desiree, you had a hemorrhage. There's not a single hemorrhage patient advocacy organization out there. Same thing, Ashley, there's not one single organization out there like there is for the AFE Foundation or the Preeclampsia Foundation. What are some ways that, providers could try to connect with other patients that have had lived experience that they could work with on projects?
I think that allowing space for healing, I don't think that you should reach out to a patient that just went through it. Because for instance, if they hemorrhage, they are not in the best state of mind or physical health, or they're gaining a routine with the baby. I think that you need to maybe you could put it on the radar, maybe with one of the surveys they send out or something. There could be something that connects them to Mama's Voices. I don't know, something like that. But I do think that there has to be a respectable amount of time before somebody talks to somebody about advocating for whatever you want them to advocate for. Because I think that they have to be stable. And I think that when a certain, a traumatic situation happens with a birth in a hospital, they're not necessarily stable, or like acclimated to caring for a newborn baby. So I do think that like a spacious amount of time, put it on their radar, would be the most respectful thing to do.
There's not a certain line in the sand. I feel like I've said like where, okay, once they've hit this timeline, then they're going to be ready. Like it's so individualized on when people have gone through that healing journey. And I love the word you use of being stable, because that is, that's a good way of putting that. And, you're ready to be involved in this work, because you're going to relive that trauma. You're going to reopen that wound. And so, making sure that you're in a place where, you have the resources and you have the tools and you've done the work to making sure that that ends in a positive way.
One of the things we're working on in the city of Utah is trying to create essentially like a network of women who, you've had your lived experience, because Ashley's right. I was not emotionally stable for a long time. I was, I left the ICU, I went home from the hospital, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm alive. But for months, I sat in the mental health trauma of it all and reliving what had happened to me. And it would have meant everything to me if I had had somebody in the beginning say, you're not ready for this yet, but when you are, here is something for you to reach out to when it's time. Because I had to make all of my connections and all of my, anything I found it on my own at 2 a.m. nursing a baby, bawling my eyes out, because I was like, the only time I felt comfortable to cry, because I don't want anyone else to see me struggle. And it was a lot of online forums, which are kind of the worst, trying to find the right information. And it would have meant the world to me to have had something already in place. And that's kind of something we're trying to work on. But if there was somebody in the hospital who would have just said, when you're ready, here's a pamphlet that we know. And I know pamphlets don't always work, because not everyone's reading a pamphlet, especially when you are drowning in a newborn phase. But if there was just something set up already to say, hey, when you're ready, this is going to be big, and here you go, it would have meant the world to me.
I wish everyone knows about Mama's Voices. So in hospitals, they have a patient that they feel need to go through a PFP training. Just kind of like reach out to them and say, hey, we have this thing that we can provide for you, and then we want to recruit you, and these are the requirements. And I love the community of learning that we went through, and the action plan, and one of them was like creating job descriptions. And I truly believe that is very important, because at the end of the day, we are also, I always look at making the patient feel important, like, hey, we need your work, so creating that job description for that patient, I think that really gets the ball rolling, and kind of, reward them for it in a way. So I know that takes long. It took me 7 years to reach out to Miranda from AFE and say, hey, I want to share my story. I feel like I can make a change. And she thankfully, introduced me to Mama's Voices. But like you said, Nicole, everyone's time fluctuates. There's no specific time on when they are ready, but planting the seed, basically just letting them know, hey, this is what we got for you. Even if it's not through Mama's Voices, just the hospital staff kind of connecting with the patient in that way, saying, we can help you. There's therapy, there's this, there's that. Just create like a plan for them, and then kind of follow up after a few weeks after giving them that information, and just see if they are ready.
So I was going to say the same thing as Honda said, because, for me personally, there was no one to help me at all. I'm like Desiree, there was no one. I bawled, I cried. After my first child, I was like, I don't want this to happen again. My family crying over me because they see me having blood, things like that. It's like, I want to prevent the first one, then to go from the first experience with my first living, I keep saying first child, living, I keep make sure I say the living part, living child, to go to my second living child to have the worst experience ever. Then like, okay, if I have any more children, I don't want this to happen again, to go to my third living child and have a little better experience, but still not that help. I believe, like everyone else says on the panel, the postpartum, once you're after delivery, is when I believe someone should sit down and talk to you. Not pushing you out there to tell your story, but someone to make sure that not only are you okay, can you handle this? Because it's not even if I never wanted to share my story with anyone, but how can I cope within myself about my story? There was no one there to actually help me to cope with my story. I had to cope on my own. And, going from one thing to another, like my first child, I did not breastfeed because of depression. So it's like I didn't develop my milk because of depression. So, thinking about the things that I went through and, what they said that could happen and, things that no one expressed to me and what was going on. Like Desiree, I bawled every night. I cried. I doubted myself as a woman. So someone should have been there, even if it was helping me get into therapy. Looking at my signs and seeing if I had depression. No one ever looked at and that's another thing. No one ever looked at my signs to see if I had depression. I had depression. So, it comes back to getting to know your patient when they come into your room as a pregnant patient. What is not trying to be into your business, but let me get to understand who you are as a person. What are you going through outside of this doctor's appointment? When you go home, what do you have to deal with? And that can actually lead to helping them after the fact, during and then after the fact. So having someone there after, and and then when you're ready to tell your story, even if you're not ready to tell your story, or if you ever never want to understand your story, tell your story to understand your story, and someone should be there to do that.
I agree with Sherwanda. When I got discharged, I had follow-ups because I had a C-section that was open to heal when I went home. So I had to go every 3 days for changing the wrap that was on there. But other than that, I wasn't offered consultation, therapy, none of that. Like, for a patient to go through a near-death experience and cardiac arrest and being told that, hey, she might not survive, here's the chapel for her family and pray, and then being airlifted to another hospital. That specific hospital never contacted me, didn't even know that I survived, didn't even know my update until I had been able to get discharged and go visit my daughter for the first time in the original hospital in the NICU. And just yesterday, I was talking to my sister, and because I'm doing the storytelling where I want to share my story through a storytelling video, like photography kind of thing. And I was like, please, I need answers. I'm still learning new things. She's like, nobody told you that you had a baby. You woke up, your second wake up, you've realized, you remembered you had a baby, and you started screaming for her. I was like, I just learned that yesterday. The whole time I'm walking around telling everybody, oh, they had to slowly tell me that I had a baby, but really I kind of remembered I had a baby. So me leaving to that initial hospital, that she's like, they fell to their knees. They thought they seen a ghost walk. They did not know that you survived. So that is so important. What you said, Sherwanda, is before, during, and after. It's so important to be following up with your patients, especially a near-death experience or any kind of trauma, just to make sure that we are okay, we are equipped to take care of this baby when we're home, and stuff like that. And I think that's very important. And I think the majority of us did not have that, which is crazy to me.
And sometimes I think providers don't. I have to remember that they experienced the trauma that we did. I mean, my provider, he's no longer practicing medicine, and he says, Des, you're too much. I can't have a relationship with the patient anymore because you messed with me too much. But he came every day at the hospital with me, and we sat and we would talk, and he'd spend a half an hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes we'd eat, sometimes he would just sit with me, and we didn't talk about the trauma, but we just talked. And that connection for me with him meant everything, because I knew that I mattered, that my case mattered, that he was worried, and that, that it was a big deal. And I know I had an ER nurse come up to visit me in the ICU, say, hey, I'm just so glad you're still here. That just those little things made me feel like I that I wasn't just a number, or, and I know that my situation and a lot of these near-death situations we're rare. I get that. But it was just really nice to have people come in and say, hey, I'm so glad you're still here.
I'm muted because my kid wouldn't stop talking in the background. I'm like, it's hard to believe we're at the top of an hour and we've just had such a wonderful conversation. I thank you all for joining us today and for all of your contributions as PFPs, for the community learning and serving as faculty. It's one of, to me, I felt like we've had such a good group of cohorts and that they've really been responsive and listening and showing their appreciation for all the patients. And so, like I said, our work isn't done, but I think as we continue to do this and more people hear about what we're doing and that it will continue to grow from there. So I thank you for your time today. And we will have this recording up on our website, and we will make sure to let everybody know once that happens so that they can watch the replay and learn from you all. And I just, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nicole, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
On that AIM, the webinar next week, is that open to anyone to register? Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
My video is not working. My computer got